That should be going on.
Oh, well, It's one, whatever.
Okay. That was unique. I didn't even click anything, and it decided to go live on us.
It's because the thing's on like a countdown timer,
Oh,
and it
that's just
probably.
a. It,
Oh,
as
okay.
I don't have it. And then my phone just went to commercial. So I don't have it set up where it'll automatically click over. I have to tell it to click over just in
Okay.
case.
Just in
So
case.
sometimes it'll sit there at 0, or sometimes we'll go early. But my computer's full of gremlins today.
Understandable. Me too.
So welcome to our Sunday fireside chat. I don't know. We're going to come up with a name for this sooner or later. If you're out there, you know what? I'll throw up a little Twitter, social media, Discord, Gilded thing. See if we can come up with some ideas of what to actually name this, because they're not really interviews. They're not fireside chats, because I don't have a fire down here in my office. They could be.
You should get one.
Yeah, in my basement.
Just get one. Just put a fire in your basement. Nothing will go wrong. It will be totally fine. Don't worry about it. Put a fire in your basement.
Absolutely. I've seen that movie before. Doesn't end well. Well, welcome to the library. I'm your librarian, David, and we're gonna start off with here. Nevyn Holmes, game designer, and what would you like to tell us about yourself?
Hello, my name's Nevyn Holmes. I use they, he pronouns. I am a queer tabletop role-playing game designer based out of Central Texas. I am currently crowdfunding a game called Justicar. It's a 4-player TTRPG inspired by courtroom drama, mystery, and shenanigans. It's inspired by like Phoenix Wright and My Cousin Vinny, Legally Blonde, A Few Good Men, 12 Angry Men. Stuff like that. And it's a very, very cool game where you create a crime web and then solve the crime completely together, and all within the confines of like a courtroom procedural. It's really awesome. You should go check it out. You can find it at bytes.rip/Justicar, and that's bytes with the Y.
And it's live on Kickstarter right now, so you can
Right now, it's a little over halfway, with I think 17 days left.
and you're getting close to your goal. So now's the worst part, when you're close, and then you're just counting down the days, and then you're like, okay, am I going to get that last day where everybody jumps on and finish it off?
Yeah.
Or.
It's my least favorite part of Kickstarter is the part between when you launch and when you finish.
Yes, it's horrible, because it's like funded in 3 minutes, and then you're like, why didn't I fund in 3 minutes? And then it's funny, because everything funds either right at the beginning or right at the last minute. Like last 12 hours. But
yeah, it's a slog.
Yeah, love some of the movies that you referenced. Huge fan of both 12 Angry Men and My Cousin Vinny.
Fantastic movies. My Cousin Vinny is, in my opinion, one of the best courtroom films of all time. It's fantastic.
They actually do a really good job of not getting a lot of the procedural stuff wrong.
Yeah.
And I've always liked 12 Angry Men, because the black and white one did some really good stuff. They do a good job of showing kind of how stressful, being a juror can be, because most people really have never served, or if they have served, it's just served on just a minor case, and it's like, yep, whatever. And also, if you go back as a filmmaker and you watch, there's some amazing film. So there's in filmmaking, there's a thing called the 180 rule. So you draw a line down the center of a person, and so if you're filming on this side, you stay on this side. That's why when you see people talking, camera will be here, and the camera will be here. It stays on one side of the conversation. And in that movie is like the perfect example of how to break that rule, because 11 people are arguing, the camera's on one side, and then just out of nowhere, the 12th guy yells, and then all of a sudden the camera's poof, on the other side of the people, and just you can't make that movement in your head, but it works so perfectly in that situation, and I always like to use that.
It's really good.
Love to use that particular film as showing people how to film things properly and how to break rules properly. But let's get back to Justicar.
Yes.
And somebody said we could do a fire background in here, and I probably could. I emptied out most of my shelves to go to the library. What was your... Because doing a courtroom-based RPG is really out of the norm. What was your, motivation to go, hey, I want to do a courtroom role-playing game?
So one of my buddies had been running a campaign in a Powered by the Apocalypse game, where his players were essentially being criminals but trying to stop crimes. They did a bad job, to say the least. It was basically like a Gotham 1977 was like the pitch. And he was rounding out the end of the campaign, and they essentially wanted to do a trial as the finale. And he asked me, hey, do you want to be the judge in this trial? Because you don't know anything about the campaign, and you would be really impartial. It'd be fun. And I said, I'll do you one better. I'll make a game. And I made a version of the game, and it was kind of bad, but we had fun. So I was like, okay, this has legs. I'll keep working on it. And I kept working on it, and here we are. It just kind of grew into this really awesome project.
Nice. Yeah, because courtroom RPGs are... I can only think of one, and I've only seen it once. And it was like a little indie game. It's a Courtroom Clash. It's the only one that comes to my mind. I can't think of any other RPGs.
Look it up. I'm gonna look it up and read it later. Oh, it's this one's like a board game.
Yeah. So, it's a board game that's very because of the setting of it becomes very RPG like. Yeah.
The first result was Board Game Geek, so I was like, oh, it's a board game. And then the second result was Drive Through, so I was like, oh, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I saw it once ages ago. But it's such a unique thing, and you think about it, it's like, why has no one really gone down this route? Especially as popular as murder mysteries and courtroom drama shows are I think
what it kind of comes down to is that a lot of the stuff that's, for lack of a better way to put it, a lot of the stuff that's easier to latch onto is the actual either the in the moment stuff or the way after the fact stuff. People don't really want to sit in a courtroom or pretend to be in a courtroom because it's an inherently ominous and intimidating place. It's not somewhere that you want to go oh, let's go to the courtroom for fun. I think that's why there's not a lot of games that take place in it, and also there's the fact of what do you do? What are you gonna do in a courtroom? Am I gonna role play as a juror? That sounds very boring.
Man, that one time when I was juror number 11, oh God, that game was so great.
telling stories about the times we've been on juries as if they are TTRPG stories. And then the big bad had me backed up into a corner and I said, not guilty. Perfect.
Oh, the silly things we can think of. Now I'm just picturing that. Because, we in high school and college, you have people that do mock trials and stuff. So I guess that's the closest we've had to,
That's just LARPing, though.
Exactly. That's why I tell people LARPing. I'm not really a librarian. I just LARP as one online. Oh, hey. Thank you for the follow. That's awesome. Let's see. We have a question from the... let's see. A question about Justicar. GM-less games or collaborative storytelling games need all players involved in a high degree in equal portion. What tools are there in Justicar to ensure that each player in each role has the ability to shine without overshadowing other players?
That's a really good question. From the ground up, Justicar is built so that everyone has the same level of control. Essentially, it's just different kinds of control. Um, what I've kind of done is split up. When you think about a game master, they're responsible for certain things. I have essentially split those responsibilities up and given them out to everybody at the table. Everyone at the table can create new narrative beats. Everyone at the table can lead things down a certain path. It's just the way they affect things, the way they go about it is different. Every player role has different moves that they can use that manipulate the narrative directly or indirectly. And those moves can kind of affect each other as well. Like one of the moves is to object to something. Very basic thing. You go, I'm objecting to this. And this is the reason why. And that prompts the judge to either sustain or overrule it. When they do that, that then, depending on what they do, it triggers a different reaction from the player side or the prosecution or defense side. So, you know what? I should probably have my rules pulled up in front of me so I can reference them properly. But that's just one example. There's other ways in which it's very much just it's built from the ground up to make sure that everyone is involved and having fun and can shine, and that's from start to finish.
Nice, and I mean that's a rough thing to balance. I mean, not only as a GM, you're sitting there trying to figure out how to keep everyone engaged because you'll have that one person that just picks up their phone and or is enthralled by something else, or maybe just at a certain point in the story you've lost them. But trying to build a game from the ground up that can try to continuously engage and interact with everybody, especially in a courtroom setting where you can get very one-sided at times.
I think that I'm trying to think of how to word this correctly without coming out with just like a hot take. I don't want to start discourse here today, but it's actually not difficult to make a GM-less game. The trick is figuring out what the core conceit is and what is most interesting about your game or the themes at play, and just focus on that and build around that. For Justicar, I think the thing that really makes it so easy for everyone to stay involved and sort of sharing the baton, I guess, sharing the talking stick, is one, the moves, but also it starts you start off a game of Justicar from zero. There's nothing set in stone. There is no overarching plot that someone has come to the table with. The game specifically tells you come to the table with some ideas, but nothing that you're committed to. And you start from zero and build the actual crime together, and that gets investment from everyone at the table. And the process for creating it is requires equal involvement from every player at the table. So it just makes it very easy and very natural to flow from, oh, we're making it, to, okay, now we're playing and everyone's working together to create this thing. I think another thing that helps it is that it is fully cooperative. While the characters will absolutely be antagonistic towards each other, like all the time, and it's amazing, the game has specific guidance for players to keep in mind that as players, you are all working together to figure out the truth of this crime. So your characters can be shitty and mean to each other, but as players, you should always be, playing forward and yes-anding and like really just letting each other share that spotlight.
Nice. And I like how you kind of point out there, like, a character can be shitty to another character, but the players shouldn't be, because I think sometimes one, people forget that you're playing a character, and sometimes you're playing a character that happens to be just a horrible being. And then,
It happens.
And then if you want to keep your gaming group going, you kind of got to be good with everybody.
It's important in situations like that to, I mean, in general, at the table, everyone should always be talking and staying on the same page and like making sure each other are like safe and having fun.
Staying on the same page. That's pretty funny.
This game is basically like all of my thoughts on antagonistic player and secret information, like, and how to do it right at the table. That's kind of what this is.
Nice. Well, I definitely look forward to looking through it and playing it with some people, because that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily understand how to incorporate into their games, is that the secret knowledge. You know, they're like, oh, you should pass notes. And it's like, okay, and like, I always encourage GMs to have that secret information with their players. One, it creates a little fun extra intrigue. Like, oh God, what did he just pass it? Like, what's he doing?
There's a lot of ways that you can handle it at the table, and I think that the way you handle it depends on you, your group, and your players. I've had instances where like we've got this secret and we really want it to be revealed, and it gets revealed and it's awesome and everybody has a great time. But I've also had instances where it's like, okay, we have this secret and it never gets revealed, and it just kind of flounders, and there we go. So I think like with everything at the table, secret information and how you handle it requires communication. Justicar is essentially like, there is no truly secret information, with the exception of one thing, because I let myself break my rules. The judge is the only character that has truly secret information. And that's their tilts, which are essentially their like in-character biases. But everything else, every other piece of information is written out in front of you on the table for everyone to see. It's just a matter of working together to bring that in and reveal it and use it.
Yeah, because I mean, even in a real court case, everybody pretty much knows all the information, because if a defense attorney has something, they have to share it with the prosecution, vice versa. So everybody has all the same information going into a case. It's now just convincing the jury or the judge of, you know, what's fact, what's not, and you know what the situation really is. So I like that you've taken a lot of you've come at it a little different angle than many other people do. So
yes, and it works really well. It's so much fun.
Nice. Let's see. You seem particularly interested in integrating modern technology and society into your game designs, from Kitchen Nightmares, integrating Discord, instant messenger-based games, and such. What do you find exciting in incorporating modern conversations and tools into play?
It's just kind of fun. So Kitchen Nightmares is a hack of This Discord Has Ghosts in It, by Will Yopes and Adam Vass, which is like a game in which you've got two teams of people, one of them being the ghosts and the others being paranormal investigators, and you're essentially like running around a Discord server, like changing voice channels and changing text channels, and like trying to figure out what's going on, as the investigators can speak and the ghosts can only type, and you're just trying to figure out what's going on. It's really chaotic and really fun.
I've never played that.
It's really good. And that inspired Kitchen Nightmares, which is essentially a mystery dinner LARP packaged in a Discord server. I designed that with Chris Bissett, which is truly, truly awesome. And it's just fun. Like using modern tools as a part of your game design is really fun and it's exciting and it affords wholly new um it's a wholly new like thing for us to do with
Yeah.
games.
W-
Um
With that, are
and
you ever
it's fun.
afraid that you're gonna? I mean, look at all the games that were using technology in the 80s. The VH, what is it? Captain Power. You know, the little light guns shooting
Mm,
at
yeah.
VHS tapes and stuff like that, which nobody can really even play those anymore. Are you afraid that you might lock onto something that will be dead within just a couple of years,
No.
technology wise?
If it happens, it happens.
Okay, it's just
I don't think that like it's like my bigger games like Gunlinger or Skeletons and stuff like that. Like they don't rely so much on the modern technology. There's ways that you can use it to modify the play experience, but that's not the focus of the game.
okay.
I think that it's really important to experiment with new tools and new mediums in order to like actually progress indie RPGs as an art form. So
Yeah, and
if Discord shuts down in 5 years, then whatever.
hopefully there'll be something else similar that maybe they can play along with, or they can adapt it, or someone will figure out a way to
Just
make a
just rent out a
standalone.
restaurant and play it in person.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a bunch of ways that you can continue on. Um, we don't get you're the first person that's really come on that's used technology kind of the way that you have. Most people outside of virtual tabletops, which it's easy to just adapt your game to yet another
Mhm.
virtual tabletop. It's like, oh, hey, I'm doing D&D Beyond and Roll20 and just
Mhm.
just porting the same stuff over and over again. Um, so that's not really. I mean, that is using new technology, but it's other people developing technology to play role playing games in a new way versus creating technology based around something like Discord or messaging systems. Um,
And
there's one.
I to be clear, like I cannot take the credit for coming up with the idea of putting an RPG on Discord. Again, it's a hack of this Discord has ghosts in it.
I'll definitely have to check both of them out because they sound like fun, and sound like something we could do on a fun weekend with our own Discord.
I highly recommend it. Discord Ghosts is maybe one of my favorite RPGs. It's fantastic.
Nice. Let's see. Another question from the group. Let's see. Can we touch on for a moment where Gun and Slinger came from? A game about being a sentient weapon, because as members of the library remember, I also started working on a similar game. So damn you. I'm jealous. No shade.
um, yeah, I think the origin story for Gun and Slinger is maybe my favorite out of all of the games that I've written. Um, it started as a shit post. Um, there was a game jam going around. There's a tool called Talk to Transformer. It's essentially like a neural net that spits out text based on what you put into it.
Mhm.
And there was a game jam going around that was like, "Hey, put in the names of all your games and have this spit out a list of of other game names, and then make one of those for this game jam." Um, one of the names that came out of mine was "Your gun is a gunslinger." And it was originally going to be I was like, that's ridiculous, I'm going to use it. And it was originally actually going to be a two-player versus game where you essentially like a hack of war where you're trying to play cards to beat the other person's. And then I got the idea for a Go Fish based RPG. I was like, I wonder if this will work. Completely like independent of it. I was like, can I make a Go Fish RPG? And I threw some mechanics together and I tried it out and it worked. And I was like, great, I guess I'm making this. Um, and the idea for it being a sentient weapon really was just like from the your gun is a gunslinger thing. And it just evolved into this thing that it is now. This really, really cool and entirely unique RPG.
Neat. I like the concept of being a sentient weapon. It's such a neat take of being the focus, because I mean we've had weapons with souls and sentient weapons throughout gaming for decades, but it's never been it's been something in the game versus being the game.
Mm-hmm.
So how many different RPGs do you have under your belt now? Seems that you had enough to spit into a name generator to spit something else out.
I had less at the time. Let's see, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11 that are released.
Nice.
Then let's see. There's Justicar, which is currently crowdfunding by /Justicar. That's 12. I've got a bunch of sketched games and some other ideas, so probably close to like 15 at this point. And I think I've been doing it for like maybe a year or two.
Where's best place to find all of them?
If you head on over to nevyn.games, you can find, that's my website. It's got like my portfolio of design work. You can kind of find links to everything. And if you want to buy physical copies for a few of the games that we still have physical copies for, you head on over to dinoberryjam.com.
I'm going to have to go there real quick.
Yes, please do. There's also a lot of really cool like art and stuff. That's my wife's website. She does a lot of the layout for pretty much all the project at this point. She did the layout for Kitchen Nightmares as well as the interior art. She did a lot of layout work on Gunlinger. She did the redux of What Waits Beneath, and she is on the docket to do the layout for Justicar, provided it funds.
Nice. Well, it's awesome to have someone that you can partner with that does that helps you out with all kinds of awesome things. And shout out to the wife who is currently watching and will help clip bits from this. And if you're watching and you want to clip stuff, you can help her by clipping things so that we can share them on social media, because we like to share bits throughout the week after these fireside chats to one, have more presence on social media, and two, put out the word for whoever was on with us and whatever projects they're working on. So on Justicar, because it is such a unique system, you couldn't just go grab something off the shelf. How much research did you end up doing on how courts in the legal system work?
I watched a lot of movies. I watched a lot of courtroom procedurals. I played some Phoenix Wright because it's romanticized. That's like the key word here, is that Justicar is focused on romanticized courtroom drama.
Yes.
You are emulating romanticized courtroom media. I did do like some reading up on like, okay, how does cross-examination work? What are the things you can object for? It turns out you can object for pretty much anything, by the way, which does not make for a fun game. One of the playtests, one of my very good friends was in the playtest, and he just pulled up a list of everything you could object to and was doing it. And he was doing it for a bit, so it was funny, but it made me make a limited list.
Nice. Because otherwise you get liar, liar, like, I object. Why? Because it's really, really bad for my case.
We have had that come up in an actual play that we did, and it was really funny. Aside from that, though, aside from my watching a lot of movies, I have actually hired on an actual lawyer to come on and read the game and do consultation to make sure that the things that need to be accurate are accurate.
So you have an actual rules lawyer.
Yes, I have an actual rules lawyer, and it's fantastic. It's amazing. It makes me so happy. It's really funny to me.
The first time that we've been able to reference a rules lawyer and not go,
I'm paying someone to be a rules lawyer. But no, he's great. Kevin is really really awesome. He fully understands like what I'm going for, and has actually been like playing TTRPGs for most of his life anyway. So like he gets it.
Nice, and that's an important thing is if you bring somebody on, you don't want to bring somebody on. It's like, well, you got a lot of this procedural stuff wrong. It's more like it is in the movies. Like, well, that's what I'm going for. Like,
Bingo.
you need somebody that understands the direction that you're going with it, that can actually make it work and still be enjoyable, because it sounds like a really neat idea. Let's see, another question. Lackey has been a huge help with the library, and he loves to chime in with questions all the time. So I always love asking his questions and directing the conversation. Let's see. Do you think there's a growing divide between traditional hack and slash campaigns and the indie scene? Should there be? Is it a problem? And if so, how do you bridge that divide?
I think that depends on who you ask and where you're looking, because there are a lot of indie games that are like about going into dungeons and smacking shit. I personally do not really think that there's a divide, but again, it depends on where you look. This is a big question, and I'm having to think. I didn't expect to use my brain today, so I'm having to wake up the rest of the brain cells.
I'm gonna say something on this one. Is I think that you are right. There are indie hack and slash games, but because so many of the mainstream, they're so accessible within the mainstream companies that's not typically what gets the attention in the indie scene.
I don't know that that's necessarily true either, because I've actually seen within the last couple of years, it is hack and slash games that get the attention. It's your Sword Dream and your indie OSR games that are doing gangbusters. Like, to talk about Merkborg, it's not really what I would classify as indie now, but when it dropped, it kind of is. It kind of was, and it blew up. And a better example even is Mothership, which is fully OSR and fully kind of hack and slash horror. It's massive. If you want to make a project that makes a lot of money, you make it for Mothership. I think that any sort of divide that exists is purely one that people are perceiving or projecting. I don't think that it's real.
Yeah, it might be.
I say that I also say this as someone who is working on a number of like go and kill shit games.
Well, it's good that you're doing something totally outside the box with a courtroom game, and still being able to go and do the hack and slash style.
I think what it comes down to. This is a really good question, Lackey. It's a really good question. I think what it kind of comes down to really is that there are different approaches to the ethos of design. There are, like you said, the mainstream stuff, like your Dungeons and Dragons, your Pathfinder, stuff like that. That's a game where you sit down, you do grid-based combat, and you have a good time. If that's your thing. And then when you look at the indie games, again, depending on which section you look at, it's like a territory map of different approaches to design. But indie stuff typically, like in my experience, asks different questions about those mechanics that you engage with, or at least my favorite things in the medium do. So I don't think it's a true divide so much as a difference in approach.
And I think some of on our end, we've tried to reach out to game designers that aren't necessarily creating hack and slash games as much, just because we
there's a lot of them.
we're always looking for things that are new and different and cool, and sitting down and talking to somebody that's created yet another 5e or OSR add-on or clone is I don't want to say less exciting, but we're probably going to get a lot of the similar mindset and answers, unless they've created a really cool world around the system, which then we may get some really really neat topics of, created this interesting plant-based world with no tech because I thought it'd be different, something to that effect.
Definitely.
And my wife chimes in and says, indie creators are more likely to chat with us.
That's fair. It's gonna be hard to get people who are under NDAs to talk.
We've had a couple like, hey, I can talk about what I'm working on, but I can't talk about what I'm not working on.
Yeah.
or I can talk about this thing that I'm working on, but not this other thing I'm working on, not this thing I had been working on. We've got a couple of those.
But I can only say a few things about this other thing.
Exactly. It's nice when we get the indie and the mid-size, but getting a writer for something like a new D&D book is, we could end up in a whole lot of dead ends trying to do those chats because it's like, oh yeah, I can talk about my process, but not what's actually going on.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to get the breaking news stuff.
What was your first role-playing game?
Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition.
4th edition. Oh, that's an interesting one. I'm always intrigued by that.
Started with 4th edition, then actually switched to 3.5. Then I played Shadowrun, and then I started playing good games.
Shadowrun is a great world.
Shadowrun is a fantastic world that I would love to play in a better game.
And I've said this many times. The first edition of Shadowrun was so bad. It was like 18 months later, second edition was out because basically as soon as they got Shadowrun it was so bad. But it was all like last minute. They added all the magic and trolls and elves and dragons. All that was added in like last minute so that they would be different than Cyberpunk 2020. And it was literally a fever dream of the head. He was at home with like 103 fever. Called up the team. Was like, we know how we're going to be different. We got like 6 weeks before we go to print. We're adding magic in, so they had to get like all new maps, new art. They had to get a hold of all the artists that they had already gotten art from. Like, hey, can you draw me a cyberpunk troll now? They're like, what?
That's
like,
wild.
So first edition of it was so broken. It's like, imagine that system without all the magic and stuff, and it's like, oh, it's actually not a badly built game. Just when you throw all that in last minute, it breaks the game. But it created such a cool world that people have been playing it since 1989 through 5 editions now, and let's see, so
6. We're on the 6th edition now.
Are we on 6th edition now? Jeez.
I think Shadowrun 60 is what released like last year.
Yeah, because
I heard it was bad.
Oh, 5e was pretty decent if I remember correct. Because 4th edition was WizKids, and that's during 4th edition. That's when they sold it to Green Ronin. I think it was Green Ronin. No, Catalyst.
I think
Catalyst,
the edition I played was either 3rd or 4th for Shadowrun.
Yeah.
It did not last long. It was maybe like a 3 or 4 session campaign, and then we were all like, okay, none of us like this game except for this one guy who figured out how to break it, because that's how you have to play that game. You have to have like some real system mastery to be any good at Shadowrun.
Oh yeah. I remember being a GM of first edition when it first came out, because I grew up in a comic book store, and for some reason or other, we were at the FOSSA headquarters before the game came out, before it was even available for sale in the catalogs, and we're walking through looking at some BattleTech stuff at the time, and I was like, "What's this?" They're like, "It's our new role-playing game that's coming out. Would you like a copy?" I was like, "Yeah." And remember going through, going, man, I was just enthralled by the world, and I got so many people to play, and I remember struggling to be a GM of that game because it's the first edition especially was so easy to break, and you're just like, oh.
Oh yeah, they always are.
It's a very important game for game designers to sit down and read through and understand how easy it is to, because it's such a mainstream game that it amazes me, again, because of the world, it is still around. Because of the art, that cover by Larry Elmore still is burnt in the brain of so many people. But the underlying game system, albeit kind of fun, is that especially the first edition was so broken. And I think every game designer that's working on role-playing games needs to find a copy of that, read through it, and just go, ooh.
I think that there's a lot of... Oh, to digress. So there was a huge gap in RPGs where I just didn't play for like 10 years. Then I started up with 5th edition, and around Zine Quest 1 on Kickstarter is when I like got back into RPGs in a really big way. And that was when I first started exploring like indie RPGs and got really, really into designing them.
Nice. You're like, wait, games can be this simple and small? They don't have to be a 250-page tome?
Well, it's not even about that. It's about how unique the games are. The stuff that I was seeing come out of Zine Quest was unlike anything else I had ever seen. The thing that really, really opened my eyes is Black Mass by Will Jobst. Really, really inspirational design in that it's a tarot-based role-playing game set in the Salem witch trials, and nice. It is phenomenal. It's a brilliant game. But there are huge games in the indie scene too. There are massive games in the indie scene that are also just amazing. Like I've got a copy of Coyote and Crow sitting over here, and that's maybe 600 pages. I have Lancer on my shelf. I have Heart. People have this misconception about indie games that they're all small and weird. There's a lot of them that are small and weird, but there are... If you give an indie designer money, they're gonna go apeshit and make something phenomenal.
Sometimes in the worst way, though. Because
unfortunately,
you look at some of the older one that always comes up, The World of Cinnabar.
I'm not familiar with this.
Oh, you want to find one of the most bonkers games ever?
I'll check it out. I'll look it up.
Yes, it is.
I'll look it up now so I don't forget.
It's absolutely worth looking up sometime. It is one of the most bonkers games. It's just, it is difficult to play, difficult to run, and you just read through it and you're just like,
cool cover art.
I don't do drugs, but I want whatever this guy was on. Well, and the reason I said being small is because you'd brought up Zine Quest, which
Zine Quest really
exactly Zines are all going to be small indie games because Zweihander was originally an indie game, and it was that book is like this thick.
Oh God, Zweihander.
I love that he's adapted that to other settings now. He's got a Revolutionary War setting for it, which I was like, what? And it's lost in the mail at the moment. Thank you, USPS. Let's see.
I think we had a question come up in there somewhere.
We did. I'm scrolling back to it. See. You touched on how playtester objected to every moment in Justicar as a bit. What other happy surprises emerged from playtesting that you knew had to become a rule in the game?
That's kind of the only one, but that's kind of the only happy accident, we'll say, that came about and helped me really create a rule. But playtesting in general has helped this game a lot. This game is nothing like the first draft that I made. It's gone through a lot of changes. It used to have like points that you had to spend to do things. It used to have a whole flashback system. The character creation used to be more disconnected. And there's a lot of stuff that's just come about through playtesting that has helped point me in the right direction for what this game really wants to be.
Nice. I always love hearing how, because some people don't value playtesting, which
Playtesting is good if you need to playtest. Not every game needs to be playtested. Not every game wants to be playtested. But if you feel like you should playtest your game, then playtest it.
I'm a huge fan of blind playtesting because more often than not, I run into games that haven't been playtested, or I'll get sent a game to take a gander through, and I find the appendix rule. And I don't mean appendix book-wise. I mean appendix, the vestigial organ of the thing that you're just like, this makes no sense. Like, I can literally take this out, and it'll you're one rule less, and you're the same game, or a less confusing game, or you find the rule that somebody's never written right and has always explained, and you're like, oh, it's perfectly worded because everybody gets it. It's because they spend 5 minutes explaining this poorly worded rule.
Yeah, playtesting and editing are important. There was, to talk about playtesting, I think it's kind of, you can kind of tell when you're experienced, when you've done a lot of reading and playing of RPGs, you can tell when a rule exists in a book because of playtesting. There was a stream that was reading through Gunlinger, the weekly scroll, and they got to a point and they pointed at a rule and they said, I would bet money that this rule was put here because of playtesting. And I popped up in the chat and I was like, it was!
Yeah.
It's extremely good. You can tell.
Oh, absolutely. It's it's the rule that's like, look, please don't break every other thing. Like, this has been broken because we had to rewrite this. Like, in some of those rules absolutely shout out. It's like the danger high voltage sign. Like, why do we have that? Well, somebody touched it and died. So now we put danger high voltage on everything. It's like, if there's a sign for it, that means somebody's done it. It's like, please don't pee on the birds. Why is that?
Or there's also
somebody's done that, hasn't they?
the rule in particular here. So in Gunlinger, as you're playing, you're making pairs of cards from your hand and putting them in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
The maestro, or the GM of that game, does not do that. Their cards stay in their hands, and that was the rule that they pointed to as being like, this came about from playtesting. And yeah, it goes to show that, like, you're not only going to find like a minutia and caveats to put into your game from playtesting, you're also going to find new ways to design the game from playtesting. Because when the game was originally being developed, the maestro did make pairs, and in playtesting I learned this felt awkward, this felt bad, this like didn't work for what I was trying to go for. So I said, all right, just keep them in your hands. I don't care. Keep them in your hands. Let's see how that goes. And we did, and we tried it, and it worked great.
Nice.
There's more to playtesting than figuring out how a game is broken.
True. Yeah, because sometimes it's like I said, I've looked at a ton of games, and I've gone through like, hey, have you thought of a different layout for your book? Because reading through, it's like, hey, the rules are good, but your layout is confusing to would be confusing to most players, and they're like, oh, we hadn't really thought of that. And little things like that. You hand somebody, the playtest set. A lot of people don't look at necessarily like the layout and stuff like that. And they'll struggle through it, going, okay, again, this is just this is their working copy, and then they'll
then
mention,
it releases like that.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, oh, it wasn't a working copy.
I mean, and not everybody has the time or the money or the other resources to be able to like invest in like full on layout work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with releasing a game as a Word doc.
No,
it's just gotta shine in other ways.
Yeah, it better. And I always tell people, like, if you're trying to put out a game to the masses, never skimp on your art and stuff, because I've seen so many great games that have no art or limited art, and you have to be a stellar game that people will run around and share with everybody. Otherwise, no one will ever see it. It's never going to get bought on a shelf.
It is unfortunate, but like people do be out here judging books by their covers.
We are a visual creature.
I'm guilty of it. If something looks cool, I'm gonna go check it out.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it.
Brought up Coyote and Crow. I mean, it's a great game. I love the premise behind it and everything.
It's so cool.
But the art, that cover is stunning. And we were at Gamma, and how many, I saw people walk by and like, whoa.
Truly just a fantastic freaking cover.
Yeah.
All the way down.
The art
it's so
is,
badass.
Yeah. And through the whole game. So having a good-looking game can get extra hands and eyes on your product.
It's marketing. That's what it is.
It is. If you don't, you better have the most amazing thing that people will be amped to share.
And that is, of course, like if your goal is to go out and make a game that sells and make a lot of money on it. If you're just out here designing games to design games, and who cares? Just put it on itch.
Yep, put it on itch. Throw it up on.
Put it on itch. Tell your friends.
Exactly. There's. Let's see. So first, will you be at Gen Con?
No.
Okay. Well, we hope to be at Gen Con. So we're raising funds now, trying to get everything coordinated. So we'll be at Origins and Gen Con. That's going to suck every bit of our funds for quite some time. Let's see. Can we talk about the awesomeness of the front of the font choice in Coyote and Crow? I don't know. Lackey's got the library's copy of Coyote Crow, so I don't remember what the font looks like right now.
Hang on.
We were actually having a discussion about this just yesterday.
That's a really cool. It's kind of like a semi-serif font. I think the thing for me is that it's big. It's big font. That's like maybe 11 or 12 point. And it's how do you say, legible? Yeah,
he said it's one of the most readable books ever, and
it's fantastic.
We were literally having this discussion yesterday. So through the military and stuff, I do like news reads and I do voiceover work and stuff. And if you get a script, it's always in Times New Roman, 12-point font, all caps, double spaced, because it forces you to slow down and read every word. If you read like Arial in 10 font, your brain will skip words. And
absolutely.
I've tried to do cold reads with that, and it's like it is a struggle. Like my brain is tired after a 1-page read that's not typed up properly. So we were talking about how how to talk to game designers to make books more readable for people with dyslexia and the like. Now,
I think that
going my route where for broadcasters, that'd be horrible, because no one would want to read those books, because you would read them very slowly, and it would be a labor for most people to just try to read books. But you've got to find that happy medium where everybody can read it fine while you're still trying to make it look presentable and not boring and meh, because Times New Roman, very readable, but it's a really meh looking font.
Everybody knows it. It's boring.
Yeah.
It's not an interesting font to look at.
You don't want your book to look like you copy and pasted it out of a newspaper.
Unless you do.
True. Yeah. If you're making a newspaper-based RPG, then go for it. It's going to fit your aesthetic. But
I think
Times New Roman wouldn't do well for like Coyote and Crow. It would look totally out of place.
I think something else to keep in mind too, and this is kind of a production side thing, is that when you are choosing your font, when you're choosing your size of your font, that has a knock-on effect of the size of the book. So if you're printing in half letter, like most indie designers are, then you can't use like a 12 or 13 point font, because that's going to balloon the size of your book.
Yeah.
Coyote and Crow is 8.5 by 11. This is a full letter book. It can get away with doing this.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic for it. But, not everybody is producing games at that size.
No, but he does. I mean, Lackey brings up a great point because it is a very readable book, and I remember flipping through it before.
Yes, it's extremely readable.
And it's finding that happy medium of book size versus readability, because the cost difference between a 10-point and 11-point font can be dramatic when you're talking thousands of books. Hell, it can be dramatic when you're talking 100 books.
It all depends on. There's a lot more like facets of it than people think of at first.
Absolutely. When I'm printing off a script to read, it's 5 pages, and it's funny because you can tell the difference. It's 12-point font, double spaced. We all going through college tried the double spacing and larger font to get away with. It's like you need a 5-page paper, 12 font. You're like, oh, I'm limited to 1 page, 8 font.
Perfect.
See, yes, it was Roll for Kindness. Peter from Roll for Kindness, who we were chatting with yesterday in person about all kinds of great ideas. Some tangential to the library, but a lot of things that we were talking about, like making just little things that we can advise on to people trying to make games more accessible. Like I never thought about color blindness until I had a friend who didn't want to play a game because he found out he couldn't read it because it wasn't the font or anything. It was the color, the slight color on the page made it near impossible for him to read the black letters on the page, because the way his eyes perceived the back page just made everything just kind of wash out. It was so weird. Like and it was funny because he goes, he'd never really noticed before until I can't remember what book it was. It was back in the early 2000s. It was one of these 8 million D20 clones, and the setting looked cool, and he just opened it up. It's like, that's not for me. And I was like, this is so totally for you. And he's like, I can't read it. I was like, what? See. Amazing how production issues can impact an actual game design, and large font equals less content due to spatial limitations, which makes a designer streamline their rules.
Sometimes,
or
sometimes, not always.
Or you go with the smaller font so you can squeeze more in.
Yup. There's like Gunlinger is a fairly streamlined game. That is as streamlined as it can be. If we had to have more pages, it was just going to be more pages. There's no going back and streamlining those rules or that text because it was already as thin as I was happy with it being. So it's not always going to lead to something like that. Sometimes people just don't do the bigger font.
Yeah.
It's going to be unique in every single situation.
Yeah, and you may look and go, well, I can make this zine 10 pages, or I can make it 8 pages. Little decisions like that. So, what's your playtest been like outside of the one objection game for Justicar?
Oh, fantastic! And to be clear, even that game was like really, really fantastic. He only did that during like one section. Yeah. It wasn't the entire game. It was enough for me to go, oh, this is not gonna stay. It's been great. Like every single playtest of it has been truly just wild is how I will put it. If I send you an image, are you gonna be able to put it up?
You can share. I gotta remember how to do it on.
I want to show you a crime board.
Let's see.
Here.
Oh, so if you go on yours, if you go down to. Oh, where did it go?
I sent you a link to a Twitter post that has a crime board in it. Suffice to say that the play tests and the actual plays and everything have been really, really incredible. It very reliably, as a game, creates something more unique than any one person sitting at the table could have like thought of. Creativity rules. There haven't been a lot of instances where it's like, oh, this doesn't work, or in like a truly like really detrimental way. It's usually been like this small change here, this small change there. Exception given to like the early on ones, like the very early playtests. I had a couple that were just like, oh, this does not work at all, so I'm gonna make some sweeping changes. And I talked a little bit about those earlier. I've thrown you for a loop by asking you to display an image, and I'm very sorry.
Oh, you're fine. It's doing a different way on. Let's see if everybody can see this. Come on, transition. There we go. There we go. See.
You won't be able to zoom in too much on this, just because it's kind of a small Twitter image. But is it going?
Yeah, it should be live. So
there's
you've
the
seen
tweet.
the incredible. Hit the.
Oh, why isn't it? It's click on view on that tweet.
Oh,
I don't know why it does this.
There we
I think
go.
I think it's the pictures. And then if you blow that image up.
Hang on. For some reason or other, wasn't following the. Okay, why is it? Well, fine. I'm going to just do screen share. I was trying to share the web page, and it was like, "Ha, we're gonna do this another way."
Okay, then click on view. Because for some reason Twitter thinks that my crime webs are sensitive content.
They are, aren't they?
I mean, if you're afraid of it could be this picture of a rooster with teeth. That could be the thing that's making it sensitive.
I'm gonna get it here in a second.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're perfectly fine. There we go. Let's see. And can everybody see that now? As I click away.
That's kind of working. So that's a crime web. It's kind of hard to see on the stream, but I can actually drop a link to the tweet too, so that people can just see it themselves. I hope your BondBot doesn't ban me. But yeah, this is kind of the stuff that comes out of it every single time. You can see how we from ground up create the. You can essentially read this top down in order of like how we made things. We made the palette, we set up our safety tools, we created the crime and like what the true nature of it is, and just top down, just every single time we play this game, it ends up making one of these, and it's fantastic.
Bruce the Goose. Okay, can you walk us through this a little bit?
Yeah. So when you start off a game of Justicar, and you can play this game in person. Mm-hmm. This was made on Miro, which is essentially just for like creating flowcharts and collaborative like drawing and stuff like that. The first thing that you do is you create your palette, which is like your touchstones for the session that you're going to be playing through. You create the crime, which is just like one or two words, is like, oh, a kidnapping, a building disappeared, a mugging, something like that. And then you create the bigger picture, which is like something that we as players know, but the characters who are investigating don't. You create your victim and defendant. You just give them a name, pronouns, a look, and then you actually set out and create the rest of the characters. The stand are the witness characters. Those are made collaboratively. Everyone creates one, and then everyone creates like a full character and then passes them to the actual stand player, who then essentially throws them all in a blender and like mixes and matches all the different character aspects to create something completely new. Then you create the judge and you send them their tilts, which are their biases that affect how they play, how they engage in role play during the session. And then the prosecution and defense get made. They don't have any secrets or biases or anything like that. Then you create connections, which are all of those red lines that you see with a bunch of text on it. So we can see that like the defense at some point in the past, the defendant beat the shit out of the victim. Just as a previous connection to shape how they interact in play. We can see that 2 of these characters were exes, and they're both still bitter about it. 2 of them are competing in a Senate race. 2 of them had a very ill-advised fling at a holiday party one time. And those all just give you fuel for roleplay. And these are all made collaboratively. Everybody makes 3 different ones during this phase.
Okay.
Then you create and pick the evidence, and you ask some questions, and then you play.
Okay. I like this. I like that it is, you're working together to build up a
conspiracy board.
Yes.
A crime web.
Conspiracy board.
Yeah, it is the way that I like to describe it is you create a conspiracy board that intentionally has plot holes, and then you play to fill in those plot holes. That's essentially how it goes.
I dig it. It's neat. I like that each person gets a say in building out. The judge gets a say in building out all the random relationships.
Mm-hmm. It's really, really awesome. Not to toot my own horn, but I think this is kind of magic. I think it's witchcraft what I've done here, and I'm happy with it. And again, all of the stuff that I have is in Miro because I've been playtesting online. But you can play this game in person. It's designed to be played in person or on Miro. And I've got some pictures somewhere on my Twitter floating around of an in-person crime board that I made, which is you use note cards and sticky notes and red string and tape, and you slap it all together, and it also creates something very awesome.
Nice. I'm just thinking of how fun a one-shot could be with these at events.
Oh yeah, I bet this would be a great con game.
In more ways than one. Lackey asked another question here. Let's see. Have you ever had a chance to observe others playing your games without you involved? And if so, what's an unexpected story that's emerged from that? I always love finding creators that have got to watch people play, or they've sat in games that somebody's running that they don't know that you're the creator of the game. And
yeah, some of my older games have been. I've caught Let's Plays of them or actual plays of them online. Skeletons gets a lot of mileage. People really like to play that game for good reason. It's hilarious. I've seen people just recently. Roll for Felicity did a 2-part stream of Justicar. They did a stream for setup and a stream for the actual trial. And I was not present for that one at all, but it turned out great. Those people are so charming. There's a couple of Gunlinger APs floating around out there. It's just fun, and it's always surprising. I struggle to recall a specific thing, but I never expect what I see when people play. my games, because they're kind of universal in some interesting ways, and they can go in so many different directions that it's never really what I expect, and I think that rules.
Nice. We've had a couple of cool stories of people sitting down to play a game at a convention that was theirs, and the person running the game didn't recognize them, so they introduced themselves at the end, which is I can't imagine like sitting through your own game as a player and no one knows who you are.
That'd be pretty fun.
And for some people it's like near impossible within the role-playing game world, but for some of the indie creators it's something that is possible and can happen at events. Especially through something like the library, where we get people who are playing all kinds of random things, because they'll pick up something and be like, oh, hey, can I run this? Or we'll get GMs that want to run, we usually ask people like, hey, can you run games that aren't 5e or Pathfinder? That's usually a request for, because like you can find 5e and Pathfinder everywhere, and they have organized play. So we just, one, we don't want to step on their toes, and two, we want people to play more games, because, in fact, out of the meeting yesterday, I'm gonna work on a panel talk of, looks like we've got advertisement. It's commercial break.
I love commercials on twitch.tv.
Yeah. We didn't have them until recently. But
yeah, they started a thing where they're just rolling them during the stream now.
Yeah, which, hey, if we get a few extra nickels, that's all the better. Everything that we can to
and we're back.
Help us out. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so one of the things that came out of yesterday is I'm going to be working on a panel/talk that I'm going to be developing over the next few months. I'm not your GM, or I'm not the GM for you, because it's something I say regularly. Because I may not be the GM for you. I'm not the GM for every person. I try to get people to understand that just because someone that's gaming with you doesn't like how you GM, it's not a bad thing. Just not everybody meshes together. You're not the player for every person. You're not the game designer for every person. So trying to get people.
Well, I am, but I understand what you mean.
But we get plenty of people that come through the library and like, I've played before. I didn't really like it. And we talk to them for a few moments, and we find out they didn't really like D&D. They're not into the fantasy thing, or they didn't have a good GM. So we try to talk them into finding a game that they can be passionate about and giving a shot with another GM. We're like, they may absolutely love role-playing games, but they just happen to have a bad experience to round one. So I really want to I want people to understand I'm not the GM for everybody is something everybody should take to heart when they're gaming, and some of it you can change and improve. Some of it may hey, let's try a different game. Some of it let's try a different tactic.
I hear so many horror stories about people just not being into RPGs because of just a bad first time experience, and like that's kind of all it takes.
Yeah, and I've spent a fair amount of time in person at events, speaking to people and kind of overcoming that bad first experience. It's like somebody like, I don't ever want to drive a car. Like they had a bad experience driving a car their first time. Like, oh, it's horrible. It's like, well, I know plenty of people that have wrecked cars that get back in them and just love driving. It's like you've got to, did you have a bad experience?
You have to find the car wreck that's made for you.
Yes. I've had a few of them.
I want to get. I like what Lackey just said, because that's just what it says on my website. That is the first line of text on my website.
You're the game designer for everybody.
I make games, and holy fuck, you're gonna love them. If you don't, then that's your fault, not mine.
And you know what? Honestly, that's fairly true, because you're making something that is going to be fun, and if somebody else doesn't find it fun, then they can move on to another game, because they're not the gamer for you.
They can give me money and then move on to it.
There you go. like that one. Like, buy my game. If you don't like it, then move on. And make sure you tell somebody else about it so that they can buy my game and move.
But no, I do get what you mean.
Yeah.
Though. Like, not every game is for every person. Not every group is for every person. That's fine. That's just how it is.
No,
that's
and
how
that's
people
why
are.
that's why we love sitting down with people like you, because I mean, again, there's one other really oddball, obscure court-based RPG that probably no one has heard about until I said something. Is I don't even have a copy of it. I just somebody had a printed copy of it at an event somewhere, and I saw it, and I don't even think it was out yet. I think it was like somebody like was part of a Discord that it was shared with them.
That's really funny.
Yeah. So, but I think you're going an entirely different direction, and seems way more interesting and involved for the entire party. So I think there's a lot of really cool design aspects that other people could learn from this game, which I always love. I always love getting people on board with, hey, go, because you can't copyright a mechanic. So I always love getting people into the library and going, ooh, let me look through. I'm trying to find some old mechanic that's forgotten, because somebody's probably already made every mechanic that you've thought of. Just it may be in some obscure lost game from the 80s or the 90s.
You would think so, but I will pose a challenge. There is not another game before Gunlinger that does Go Fish as a TTRPG.
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, but there's probably some weird obscure one.
If you find one, you let me know. But I doubt it exists.
Challenge accepted. I will be looking over the next few years for the other Go Fish RPG from
Your
like
white whale.
1982. Weirdly enough, I actually got the library's White Whale. It was the Pirates of Darkwater RPG. Never thought I'd get my hands on that, and got our hands on that. So I've got to find. I guess this is my new gray whale. We'll go with slightly less white.
Okay, I understand. I understand. It's valid. I get it.
He's not totally albino. He's just mostly albino.
Dalmatian.
It's my Dalmatian whale. There we go. The next Go Fish game is my the original lost obscure 1980s Go Fish RPG that may or may not exist is my new Dalmatian whale.
Perfect. Love to see it. I love to give people quests.
Yeah, it's role playing in real life.
Exactly. We're LARPing right now.
Exactly. If I ever find it, I'll have to come find you again. You'll have a question mark over your head, and I can complete and get. Some
and that'll be the stream. It'll be like 5 minutes.
Like, look what I found.
Oh wow, cool! Here's your 50 experience and 12 silver.
And the game is horrible. There's a reason why it was hidden. Let's see, what are some biggest non-gaming influences? Fiction, travel, food, politics, business, roller coasters.
Video games, music, and politics. Life.
What's your favorite band?
My favorite band?
Currently, because I know that's always changing.
I don't think I really have one. I kind of just listen to everything all the time. Let me name whoever is on my Spotify right now. I'm currently listening to a song by El Cuervo. It is a remix of a Twin Peaks motif.
It's interesting.
I listen to a lot of punk. I listen to a lot of EDM stuff. A lot of metal, but I'm not a metalhead. I just listen to it. Don't ask me anything about any music because I won't be able to answer it. I listen to a lot of hip hop. MF Doom is top tier for me. Red Animal War is probably my favorite emo band, and they have a huge influence on one of my upcoming projects. But other than that, it's like a lot of video games and a lot of fiction. And every single one of my games is political.
Okay.
Full stop. We don't need to get into that, but I wear a lot of my beliefs on my sleeve, and I make sure that they are in my games.
Yeah, and that's that. And like we'd had a brief discussion before going live, just because we're a nonprofit, we try to stay out of the political world. But it doesn't mean that RPGs games can't be political or have a mission or drive behind them. And you know, I support people doing that, just not to the detriment of the industry as a whole, because most people use it as an escapism. So there's as long as you can still have fun and escape with it, and you're just not like bashing people over the head and making a bad game. If you're doing that, then I'll
it's a balancing thing for sure.
Yeah.
You know, knowing how to read into having media literacy, for lack of a better way to put it, is like a really important way to strike a balance of like how to make your game have your beliefs and not be just blunt about it, or, you know, be blunt about it if that's what you want to do. Not everything has to be subtext.
Yeah, and you can be blunt and still make a fun game, but if you're blunt and make a bad game, then you've done the worst of everything. Because
unless that's the point.
Yeah, well,
I've made some bad games on purpose just to say something. It's fun. It's a good exercise. It's a part of the art, right? I'm one of those little freaks that thinks that all art is political in some way. It's just a matter of what you get from it and what is being put into it. But that's like a whole conversation that I don't think we have time for.
And yeah, I actually, you know what, I'll take you on the point of you can make bad games as an exercise, because, you know, I've pointed out to people that have made games with not on stream, but you know, people that have come to me with games like they were so focused on their message or their mission that they kind of forgot to make a game while they were doing it. It's like, I was like, you got so wrapped up in this that you're preaching at people. You might as well just go make a blog post over this instead of trying to put. Yeah.
Sometimes you sit down to make a little bit of a mechanic, and when you look up from your keyboard, you've written a manifesto. It's fine. It happens. The one bad game that I made intentionally bad that I released is like fully about like imposter syndrome. It's called You Are a Creative, and all you do is roll dice and subtract numbers. That's all you do, and it's boring. And that's the point.
And that's especially within the creative world, that's a very real thing. Especially you're like, why is Jackson Pollock making millions of dollars? He just flings paint at a palette, and you look around at artists that are immensely talented who can't make money, or it happens all.
It's hard
all
out
over.
here.
Yeah, it is.
It is hard out here.
As a photographer, I'm like, why does nobody want to buy my pictures? I take awesome pictures.
Yep.
It can be insulting, and it is a very real thing. Accidental Manifesto is my new punk cover band name.
That's a pretty good band name. That's actually like a really good band name. I'm not gonna lie, that's really good.
Sometimes you write an accidental manifesto, and then you turn it into a band. It is definitely a punk band.
Oh, for sure.
I've been. You were saying you listen to metal, but I'm not a metalhead, and I've never been a metalhead. Love punk, love metal, and I've been getting back into like old Iron Maiden stuff, and forgot how.
Nice.
Because the bass player writes all their stuff, and was like big history nerd, and it's funny to go back and listen to all the rock and metal and like how nerdy they were. And then like I point out to people like Led Zeppelin wrote songs about Lord of the Rings, and they're like, whatever. And then they're like, oh my god, they're listening to the lyrics. They're like, Gollum? They're like, The Ring? Oh my God, this really is about Lord of the Rings. I'm like, yes, Led Zeppelin, the coolest band in history, wrote about Lord of the Rings and made millions of dollars.
Fucking nerds.
Oh, I know.
I'm gonna shove Led Zeppelin in a locker.
They probably did get shoved in lockers.
I'm gonna quiz them about the Silmarillion. I won't know if they're telling me correct answers, but they'll say something and I'll put them in a locker. Every time they answer a question, I'll leave them in there for another hour.
Yes, everyone out there, most musicians are mega nerds.
Oh, absolutely. If it's not about
cool
fantasy, if it's not like nerds about traditionally nerdy stuff, they're nerds about check out my pedal.
I watch a few YouTube music channels. I'm a horrible musician, but there's one guy just goes and finds like the nerdiest things in music and then try to like hook the most pedals up together like ever. And it was like this crazy like hour-long video of them testing things out to get a sound, not noise. Like,
there's a person on TikTok who has been just cycling through, running their guitar through different things. Like, I'm running my guitar through an orange. I'm running my guitar through a mushroom. I'm running it through an egg. I'm running it through my guitar. It's just cool to see, like, because everything has like electricity in it, so it's really cool to see how those change things.
Elaki said, "Stop! Now I need you to write a music tech roadie RPG."
Do it.
Roadie the RPG.
I dare you. Do it. I'm not even kidding. Do it. Write it. Do it.
That would actually
write it and release it. Do it.
Oh man, and the genre would be it'd be hilarious because you'd be the roadie and then you get thrown in with random different genre bands like, dude, I've been a metal roadie for years and now I'm touring with this folk group and.
It's a Forged in the Dark game about scrounging for resources and knowledge.
Yeah.
There you go. I did it. I wrote it for you. You're not allowed to joke about writing a game around me because I'll make you do it. So
good. And that's how we get zines. And that's how we get some of the crazy wild stuff. And then those zines, just like when you're looking at people look at all the stuff that comes across the stage on Fashion Week, and you're just like, what is that? And then 10 years later, you see its influence of that is all watered down to the mainstream fashion, a decade later. Same thing happens with in indie movies and stuff. You'll see people trying things. Peter Jackson started out low-budget gore flicks and fell in love with...
God, he sure did.
But he fell in love with, doing perspective and special effects and... Got to a point where he was so good at it that he and the Weta people, produced a beautiful version of Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, those little indie things, those little zines, those games that we may push off to the side are a future big name game designer, or could be the core to a future RPG.
Absolutely.
He went from Gorefest flicks to the paragon of cinema. True. Yeah, he's then
Meet the Feebles.
Yeah, he begrudgingly went back and did the Hobbit, not how he wanted. And I really do have feels for Peter Jackson on the Hobbit thing. Finding out he didn't have the say on it that he wanted.
That's unfortunate.
One of our Patreon subscribers always asks us to ask this question: hot dogs or tacos?
Tacos.
Tacos. Any supporting arguments behind that there?
They're better.
What about hot dogs are tacos?
No.
Okay. That was the quickest portion of that question we've ever had.
A hot dog is closer to a sandwich than it is to a taco.
See, and I disagree with that because the sandwich would be separated pieces of it. Because
nope, doesn't have to be.
Because
there was a trial This was actually in court, which is very topical. Bytes.rip/Justicar. There was a court case because there were two. It was like in a food court at a mall somewhere, I think, and there was a sandwich shop and a hot dog shop, and the hot dog shop started to like rebrand to sandwiches, but they were just selling hot dogs. And it went to court because the sandwich shop was like, you can't say that these are sandwiches, they're not. And the court ruled that they're not, but they're very close. The bread does not need to. The bread does not need to be separated for it to be a sandwich, but that's not the reason why it's not a sandwich.
But courts also ruled that tomatoes are vegetables for import purposes.
Listen, they are a vegetable. I don't care if they're a fruit; they're a vegetable.
They're a fruit, but for import taxes, because there's different taxes on fruits and vegetables, they got moved over to vegetables because the courts are like, look, they're vegetables for tax purposes, so they are taxed different than fruits.
That's fair.
So that's actually something really cool about Justicar, is maybe going back and picking some of these really weird, obscure cases, like the hot dog sandwich or the tomato fruit vegetable argument that are real court cases, and put those in there as I
will say I specifically do not want people to do that.
Really?
I do not want people to use my game to recreate actual courtroom anything. It should all be fictional.
Not even just taking the premise. And
you could take the premise, yeah.
Because I'm not talking about the whole court case. Like, hey, let's argue whether there was a court case over whether tomatoes were a fruit or vegetable. Just start at that and ditch the rest of the case, and find these silly cases and use those as your starting point, and then build everything else up.
There's a way that you could do that in Justicar that would work, and it would, because it all centers around a crime. Like, you start by making a crime, so the crime would be someone assaulted someone over this argument, and that would be like the linchpin of it.
Yeah, there's a bunch of fun ways that you could like, oh, you're stealing my business, or you're undermining, there's a ton of fun ways that you could do some of these, and I think it could be also fun. You put a bunch of them into a hat, and
that'd be fun. Yeah. As long as the important thing is, don't use it to recreate like actual courtroom stuff that happened. Like, don't use Justicar to role play out the O.J. Simpson trial. No. Don't do that.
Yes, or go over donkeys can't sleep in bathtubs. That is a real law somewhere.
Laws are ridiculous.
Oh yeah. Many moons ago, had a friend of the family that. He'd been a cop in Chicago. Then he moved out of Chicago into a little suburban town, and then they had a law that automobiles couldn't travel up and down a certain road. And then there was subtext in there. It wasn't actually part of the law. It was in the subtext, it was because the automobiles scare horses, but it was not part of the law. And he was like, hey, how about we repeal some of these silly laws, like cars can't go up and down this road. He's like, people live on this road, the cars. And the city council told him basically bug off. So he just started writing people tickets for going up and down this road. He was like, look, it's a law. We need to go through. We need to clean up the laws here because you have some just really stupid things. And
that's so funny.
After giving out something like 150 of those tickets and everybody going, this is the dumbest thing ever, the city council kind of gave in, and they went through and they found tons of just stupid laws from the 1800s, can't wear hats on Sundays. And they were like, what? This is literally a law. It's a $3 ticket for everybody wearing a hat on Sunday in this town. So they started going through and actually repealed all these stupid laws, and they were like, wow. And
that's ridiculous.
Lackey says he agrees he wouldn't want Justicar to recreate real world trials, and I agree with that. I just like the idea of taking some of the crazy case concepts and throwing those in there, and then building from there, all the cool, crazy other bits, okay, let's make the judge, let's make all the, so because there are some really bonkers cases out there that you can throw out and go,
Oh yeah.
oh, this is like and
See,
things
I have
things
a-
that people have never heard of and could give, especially if somebody gets like stumbles at the start, you give them just that little kernel of insanity to start with and see where they go. And it'd be fun to get 5 or 6 different groups and give them all the same little kernels to start with and see how vastly different each one of them is from the start.
For sure.
Let's see. That's why I don't play World War II sim games where you can replay a famous battle and come up with a different outcome. It's not for me, and that's very true. Like I like the World War II games and stuff just because I like some of the weapons and stuff from that period. But I always like it when it's just fanciful, clandestine missions that never happened. Let's see. I didn't remind you before we started, but the player character confessional. Did you have time to think about it?
Oh, right. Remind me what this question was.
So, one time when your player did, when one of your characters did something, that, caused a total party wipe, or stole a key and then still made everybody adventure on for another like six sessions before you're like, oh hey, I got the key to that thing. So you tell us the name of the character, about the character, is John Doe a half dwarf, half drow, paladin, and then so tell us the name of the character, a little bit about the character, the system, and then pause, and then in character tell us the confessional.
I don't really have anything like that.
You have any GM confessionals where you've had players do crazy things, or you've done crazy things to players?
Not that was like off the cuff or like unexpected or anything like that. I make very sure that, if we know what's going on, if the player knows if it's going to be done to a player or their character, I make sure that they know. And get their consent before doing it, because some surprises are harsh and not enjoyed. I don't really have anything for this. Sorry.
Oh,
I have confessions of like I was a bad GM. I made bad puzzles once upon a time. I brought logic puzzles to the table. Do you know the Knights Tour? I brought that to a table once in 3.5.
I've always
I told them. I
Yeah.
said, y'all can roll dice to see if your characters can solve this puzzle instead of you having to do it, and they insisted. So I think that's on them.
That has always been my struggle with bringing logic puzzles and stuff, because I've had really brilliant people playing barbarians. They're like, "Oh, I got it." I'm like, "But does your character get it?" And they're like,
Yeah, it's the
"He's
whole,
got a 9
like,
intelligence. No, he would totally not understand this." And
it's like the player skill versus character skill argument. That's like a whole thing about like, it's a whole like design ethos or a whole gameplay ethos of like, where do you draw the lines on these things? How do you deal with like what kinds of bleed that can lead to? It's not super interesting to me from like an execution perspective. I think everybody just kind of gets it.
yeah, and
your table.
I've for the most part steered clear of them at games, unless I know I'm playing with a group of people that love puzzles. And I'll throw them in from time to time, but usually they're pretty simple. Like in our Deadlands last week, literally wasn't a puzzle. It was they just had to tell me that they were actually searching around to find a obscure keyhole. And they just kept like, "We're gonna keep pushing on the door," and they're like, "Oh," they're like, and I give them like hints, like the door's doing this. And it's like,
I think what I
it's like at a point, hey, do you search around to look for keyholes?
what I do at this point, so that's a fun thing, and there's ways that you can get around that. My whole ethos at this point, when it comes to like, say I'm writing an adventure for my like weekly Blades game or whatever, write puzzles, not solutions. You create the puzzle, you create the scenario, and you let the players figure it out. If they can roll their dice in a way that lets them do the thing, then great, they did the thing. When it comes to like the keyhole stuff like that, it's an ethos of like you wrote the puzzle there. The puzzle there was they have to find a keyhole. You also had the solution, which was they have to ask to search around for the keyhole.
And they tried everything else. They're like, we're going to push on this
giant
stone slab.
Exactly. It's what happens every single time. Every single time that I have designed a puzzle that has a very specific solution, they never do it. They get frustrated, and then I have to just be like, oh, well, it's the door falls off the wall, revealing a keyhole. And nobody likes this. It's unfortunate when that happens, to say the least, because we've all got these ideas of what we're doing at the table, right?
And sometimes it's funny because like everyone laughed at like, okay, you just put this door here to make us go another way. I was like, well, I kind of did have a plan, and you guys turned left instead of right, and the keys to the right.
It can create like really interesting stories at the table when you can recover from it.
Yes.
But more often than not, it just ends up being extremely awkward. In my experience.
Yes.
Before I had a really good understanding of this, I was running a playtest of like a Monster of the Week game or something like that, or like a hack that I was working on, one of my early games, and the players needed to find a key in order to unlock a front door, and they got to the security booth, and I made them roll to find the key, and they failed. So I very suddenly had to learn. Or that's what helped me learn, rather, that even if they fail the check, they can still succeed at the thing. Something bad just has to happen as a consequence. Failing forward, writing puzzles, not solutions, stuff like that, it all kind of goes hand in hand.
And that's actually really good advice for most GMs and most game designers. Because we're all going to run into those little pitfalls of we thought the players were, I don't want to say smarter, but I kind of get the direction the players are going. They're going to pick up on this real quick. We thought we understood them. I understand the players. They're like, oh no, I did not. No, you don't. You are never going to be able to predict your players or their characters. Not reliably. Sometimes you'll get one right, and it's always fun. Yeah, it's like you can predict them to a point, and they're always going to surprise you. Like, I got this, and that's why I tell people not to write too far ahead in their campaigns, because people get so far ahead and they're like, oh god, everything was. I remember playing in a super on the rails game with a friend. He spent weeks and weeks and weeks writing this campaign to take us all through, and say, you come to a fork in the road, and it's like, to the city is to the left fork, and then the right fork goes through the woods. It's like, hey, we're going through the woods. He's like, and there's dark, ominous woods. It's like, and he's just like describing it. It's like, yeah, we're gonna go through the woods. And he's like, and then you see rise up out, and there's two giants. Like, we can probably get through there, and a chasm opens up. We're like, okay, we're going to the city, because apparently you want us to go to the city. Unfortunate. Yeah, because it's like, honestly, hey, you go through the woods and you just find another path back to the city, and you just throw a handful of extra monsters at him. It's easy, but he was so dead set on the rails of everything has to happen going this direction, and he got so far ahead of the story in his mind that we were no longer, we were listening to his storytelling versus making the story up as we went along. It wasn't collaborative at that point. I think every GM goes through that phase. Oh, yeah. You have to learn. I thankfully I did that when I was really young, and nobody has that recorded anywhere. Unfortunately, I remember perfectly well mine, and it was in that same game as the Knights Tour, so it was a great time. So not only did you put them on the rails, you put them on the rails with giant complex puzzles. It wasn't like a full board-sized Knights Tour. It was the smallest one, like 8x8 or something, like 4x4. Like, it was tiny. It was fine. It was less complex. Well, what I really wanted to do was just write a video game. And then so that's actually where a pitfall of new GMs run into is they get inspiration from video games, and they, because video games are very much on the rail. You're not playing. There's not a whole lot of even like World of Warcraft, where you have this big open world, you still get a quest and you're going down that mission path. So that's what most newer GMs experiences. So we all end up running into that somewhere down the road, and it's just learning from that and not going, well, no one wants to play with me. It's like, I've had 10 groups, and they none of them like the same game that I keep running them all through. It's like, maybe there's something in common that we have to look at here.
No, it is the players who are wrong.
It's like 10 groups of 5 players apiece. These 50 people all are wrong.
Absolutely.
Well, it has been awesome talking to you today, and I look forward to checking out Justicar. So anything else that you would like to tell us about Justicar before we head on out today?
I would really like it to fund.
You know what? I'm with you
I'll just go through like my usual outro thing. It's just, hi, thank you for having me. This has been a blast. I love to get on streams and talk about my games and yell about my very strong opinions. I have been and will continue to be Nevyn. You can find Justicar, which is currently crowdfunding over on Kickstarter, at bytes.rip/Justicar. That's bytes with a Y. We are a little over halfway to funded. We've got about 17 days left to reach our goal, which is, I think we need $3,500 more dollars. So tell your friends. Let's make some magic happen, because this game rules.
Even tell your enemies.
Especially tell your enemies.
So yeah, you're so close. You're well over halfway, and it fingers crossed that just like the last 12 hours, poof, you double what you have now, because it does sound like a fun game. I like where you're going with it. It is a really unique just setup. There's so many little things that I like about it, and I want to get my hands on it, and I want to play it at events, just because I really do think I think it would be a lot of fun to give the same little queue to like 3 or 4 different groups, just to sit back and see how each group takes that that same little queue to start with and does something entirely different every group. How they'll all have different judges, they'll all have different backgrounds on their defendant, and so I think I just, there's so many cool things I can think about doing with this game system at events. So you got me on board.
Glad to hear it.
So thank you everyone out there for tuning in, and please check out let's see, your website was also dinoberryjam.com, and pick up some games there, and back Justicar on Kickstarter, because it is pretty cool. And if the library was had more funds, we would absolutely back it at the moment, but all our funds are going to get into events this year, so that we can talk about awesome stuff like this in person. And tomorrow is news and Kickstarters, and we'll definitely be talking about Justicar more tomorrow on the news. And then Tuesday, do we have an interview? Well, I'll let everybody know tomorrow if we have an interview on Tuesday. I believe we have an interview on Tuesday. And then next weekend, we've got multiple events. We'll be at NorwestCon, and so yes, we do have an interview on Tuesday. So, oh man, it's going to be a busy week. Interview today, news tomorrow, interview on Tuesday, Deadlands on Wednesday. Thursday, we're setting up for NorwestCon and SecuriCon, and NorwestCon will go for Thursday through this weekend, and SecuriCon Anime Convention will go through Friday to Sunday. Oh man, it's gonna be busy. So
yeah, you got a lot going on.
Yeah. Thank you all for being here, and the library is closed.